Because I love him coming out doing those rallies, but those rallies are scripted. There's a teleprompter, and he's working the crowd. You take the teleprompter away, can he do it? If he can do it, everybody's going to calm down and get back to work. If he can't do it, we've got a problem. Until we see him in an unscripted environment, until we get a week out from the polls, nobody knows whether we should stick with Joe Biden or try to move away from him yet.
What do you mean if you see him in an unscripted environment? That's Van Jones on CNN. I mean, I don't think it gets any more unscripted than the stuff that we've seen. He's been falling down, and I don't think it gets any more unscripted than that. Welcome back to the program. Dana Lash here with you, bottom of this third hour. You can listen coast to coast, channel 347 Direct TV as well, where you can catch the simulcast of the radio program. Find us on Rumble, X, all that good stuff. So, there's been Gavin Newsom's going to be in New Hampshire. He's campaigning in New Hampshire. That's weird, right? Because he's not really what I would think of as like a Biden surrogate. He's the only one of all of the people who's on this list of maybe potentials to replace Biden who insists that he's not going anywhere, who's going to New Hampshire, which Trump apparently, according to a new poll, is +2 over Biden in that state. So what can we infer from this? I feel like the person best reading the tea leaves on this is Jennifer Van Laar, who's the managing editor over at Red State. And she's been on top of this from the get-go for like 2 years. I think longer than that. She's been warning everybody about Gavin Newsom. She's like, look, he's coming with all his hair products. He's coming. Wants to go to the White House. And everything that she says has panned out. She joins us now via Skype. Jennifer, so good to see you. It's kind of... So am I okay? You can tell me if I'm reading way too much into this, because I don't see Big Gretch going to New Hampshire. I don't see Pete Buttigieg going to New Hampshire. It's just Gavin Newsom, and that's kind of weird. But he says he's not running a secret campaign, and he says that it's silly to not back Biden. But he never said that he wouldn't consider maybe switching out. What do you infer from this?
That he's absolutely considering it. He's trying to play the statesman role and support Biden so he can go back and say, oh, I never pushed anyone out. I rose to the call. I think you and I spoke about this last year, where I said he'll say that this is his duty to step in as a statesman and help the party and help the country. Yeah, and that he just looks like he's being a team player. He's just being a team player, and he's just out there supporting the president. What is interesting, I know he and Kamala Harris both come from California, but they don't seem to have done any kind of joint events, and he hasn't said a thing about her, which I think is even more telling. Do you agree? Agree. And they have it now, but they came up at the exact same time in San Francisco politics with the exact same donors and backers. And little known fact, back probably 15 years ago, they mapped out who was going to run for what when, so they wouldn't be running against each other. Oh, that's interesting. So, I mean, I'm wondering who. So she was going for AG, he's going for governor. Ooh, that's very interesting. So this list, I know the Hill's come out with a list, and I think of the list because they were talking about Buttigieg, Bashir out of Kentucky, Whitmer, obviously Newsom. I mean, everybody kind of skips over Kamala Harris. Would Newsom be? Because there's a lot of discussion about the optics of kicking, a woman of color off of, out of the vice presidency and replacing her with this guy from California. Is Newsom aggressive enough to do that? Does he care about those optics at all? He cares about it only to the extent that it's going to help him and what he wants to do. So he's going to push anyone out of the way for anything that he wants. From all of my research of him, he's one of the biggest narcissists that I've ever seen in politics, which, as you know, is filled with narcissists. Yeah, that says a lot that he's like the biggest one. We're talking to Jennifer Van Laar, managing editor of Red State. You've talked before, and I think this was the last time that you were on. We discussed this, and I actually just sent this video of our interview out in my Substack a few days ago, reminding everybody of the process of how that would work if they were going to replace Biden. They had Lloyd Doggett out of Texas. He was the first elected Democrat now to say that Biden has to go. Whether the other ones line up, we'll wait and see. But until that time, if they can't convince him to relinquish, his delegates and resign before the convention, how does that work after the convention? Because you've written about this. They can question whether or not he's fit enough. And I would just think, doesn't that her decision to not charge him because he's not mentally fit? To me, if I were a Democrat, I'd be like, well, there's my excuse right there. How does this work? Right. And I thought that was going to happen whenever that her report came out, that something might trigger Joe to drop out because they had a lot more time then. And I'll couch this answer by saying that they can change their rules anytime. Their committees are all meeting before the convention in the next few weeks, and they can continue to change their rules. So I would fully expect them to do that, to do whatever is advantageous. But currently, after the convention is adjourned, if the president or vice presidential candidate is vacant due to disability, and it doesn't say who determines the disability or how, then the DNC is the one who gets to pick the replacement.
That's so they just shove the delegates out of the equation altogether, basically.
Basically.
Ooh, interesting. And you said there's nothing that explains who certifies or makes the determination about the disability. It's very vague.
Yeah, and I think it's intentionally vague. Just like all the administrative state laws that the Democrats have authored over the years, it's intentionally vague so they can define it however they want to at the time.
And they changed this in end of last year.
2022.
Ooh. So it's almost like they kind of saw what was coming down the road. Like they might as well go ahead and get ready for it. If they do this after the convention, how soon after the convention? I mean, because then you've got maybe 2 months before the election, if that. How soon do you think that would happen?
Well, given the news yesterday, things are up in the air. They might try to nominate him as early as July 21st, according to Bloomberg yesterday, and on a roll call vote on a conference call, basically. So their bylaws say after the convention adjourns. So does that mean at the end of the August convention or at the end of whatever convention, air quote, that they're doing with this nomination? That remains to be seen.
So it could be Newsom, but then and I think you've highlighted this before, you've mentioned it before. There's then the difficulty of if Biden is out, then who gets his campaign war chest? Because I think according to FEC laws, it could only go to Kamala Harris. But then again, they can just change the rules at any time, probably.
Or they could just do one of those, or they just go ahead and do it and then see whatever fines they get later.
Yeah.
I
or maybe a PAC. Could they put it through a PAC?
Maybe, but the thing is, on this fundraising haul that I've got the numbers right here. They just said that they raised $127 million in June, but that includes the DNC numbers and 2 joint fundraising committees. So those entities are not bound by the same rules that the presidential campaign itself is.
Oh, that's very interesting. So that's a lot easier to transfer those funds over. We're talking with Jennifer Van Laar, managing editor of Red State. And she says, yes, absolutely, that Democrats can replace Biden with Gavin Newsom or anybody else that they want to. So if you were a betting girl, how would you is it going to be a Newsom or a Harris? I can't imagine it would be Whitmer because I feel like she kind of has a Hillary Clinton likability problem. Pete Buttigieg is a DEI hire. Newsom can bring cash. I don't know if Harris can as well because I know that's a big factor to consider. How does this play out? What is your best guess? Because you haven't been missing with it.
So I don't think it'll be Kamala because if it was going to be Kamala, they would have already made it Kamala. They would have already had Joe say that I'm not going to run again. Like you said, Whitmer is just completely unlikable. Pete Buttigieg comes off as an idiot. And if you don't know Gavin Newsom and you don't know what he's been doing, and you're just your average person that's been going to work and taking care of your family, you might like the things he says.
Yeah,
because he lies you can't tell the man's lying. He's so good at it.
So this comes up with the other problem that you are actually tweeting about, and there is some tea here. Ooh, my gosh, it is a soap opera. It's like a California soap opera of all soap operas. So we were talking on the program a couple of days ago or last week that if they do switch Biden out, you're going to see a honeymoon period from the press unlike anything we've ever seen. I mean, they're going to gloss over everything. They would just fawn over him. But I feel like they would have to really work overtime, particularly when women are a very important demographic to Democrats. And then you have the whole story about his past marital indiscretions. And it apparently played out very publicly on the internet. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so he had an affair with his best friend's wife, a best friend who was also his campaign manager. The wife was also his employee. He was married to Kim Guilfoyle, but she was living in New York at the time, working with Court TV. So he has an affair with Ruby Rippy Tork is her name. And she was having issues with drug and alcohol addiction. So in rehab, she came clean that they'd been having this affair. the best friend said, "Screw you, Gavin, I'm out." And there was all kinds of publicity. Well, he had just started dating his now wife, Jennifer Siebel, who then went to be, White Knight, her boyfriend, online, and says, well, it was a few nothing encounters when she showed up passed out outside Gavin's door, which sounds, and I'm not going to say that it is, but it sounds a lot like date rape. And, she's obviously at that time getting her news from Gavin Newsom. She wasn't there when it happened. And if this is how Gavin explained that away, that's really concerning. But what's more concerning is that this has been out since 2007. These news articles have been up since then, quoting her. And that's how bad the California press is with holding this guy's feet to the fire. And the national press for sure would do the same.
Wow, they would definitely, especially because apparently the wife, as you said, called this Ruby lady the culprit in the affair. She got some blowback from that, and then she kept trying to rehab herself online. Just the woman did not know when to not over. She would not stop talking. It was like Kristi Noem on steroids. She just would not stop talking.
Yeah, and then she called Harvey Weinstein, who now she alleges had raped her before this, for crisis management advice.
How does that play in a, we're all shaking our heads here. How does that play in a general election? That is such a nightmare. He's already got so much baggage. They're not concerned about this?
I mean, the only thing we can hope is that someone like Gretchen Whitmer decide that they really want to go for it, and she starts slinging mud at Gavin, because the only hope we have of getting some of this stuff actually covered is a battle between Democrats.
Wow. And you add, too, in addition to revealing her terrible, talking about Jennifer Siebel Newsom, her terrible crisis communication skills, her online rants reveal a lot about her character. She cannot be allowed anywhere near the White House. I can't even imagine, because we are very concerned about the weaponization of bureaucratic agencies now. And that's just with Jill and Joe. I can't imagine what that would look like with Newsom.
Yeah, that would be child's play. Jennifer Newsom would look at Jill and say, "You're such a pedestrian."
Oh, wow. Oh, everybody's you're come after you. Oh my gosh. She might have to get herself to Texas or Florida. Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Jennifer Van Laar with Red State. You always do such great work, and we're going to be waiting to see what comes out next and your analysis of it. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.